Good evening. I'm very excited to be with you today. I'm Sarit Zehavi, the CEO and founder of the Alma Center. We are now starting a new project of webinars from home due to the fact that all of us here in quarantine. I'm speaking to you today from my small office, the office where Alma started, 2 meters on 2 meters, actually the shelter at my home, which is only about 7 miles from the Lebanese border. And since the quarantine and the social isolation that the corona crisis imposed of all of us, we are trying to create new platforms to deliver the information about Israel's security challenges on the northern borders, about what is happening here in the northern border of Israel on all three sides of the border. And this is one of the new things we are doing, having webinars over here on our website page. So I hope you are with me. And we are going in the next few weeks to have a series of lectures here. As you could already see in our page, we have tours from the ground, from the borderline, a few more ahead. And we continue to publish our regular reports, such as the weekly and the newsletter. And here, since we are now working on a completely new mode, we need your help. We need you to increase our audience. We need your help to share this webinars, these lectures, and all these new materials that we are going to provide here in our Facebook page. So let us begin. Our topic today is how Israel is facing the coronavirus crisis in the worst timing, in a timing where we are, I wanted to say in the middle, because this was the situation when we phrased the name of the lecture, but actually I hope that we are now getting to the end of a political crisis in Israel, a political crisis that we have never experienced in the state of Israel until today. So it's worse timing not only because of the political situation, but also because of the welfare system that actually was neglected for years. We have a huge lack of beds, a huge lack of doctors and nurses. The hospitals in Israel in the winter are in full capacity of 120% during to the regular flu that everybody has each year. Just if I want to compare the situation in Israel to the situation in other countries with regard to the health system, I'm speaking about in Israel we have about 2.2 beds for about 1,000 people. By the way, in the United States it's about 2.4, but if you look at Germany, where the coronavirus is very well dealt, they have 6 beds, around 3 times more than in Israel and almost 3 times more in the United States. 6 beds to every 1,000 people. Yet I must say that in Israel, every citizen is paying national security, medical security, and is entitled to get free medical treatment. It's by the law. It's for everybody. It's a part of the payments that we are paying due to our salary or by our salaries as employees. The political system, getting back to that, after 3 rounds of elections, it looks like it is getting to a dead end. It looks like nobody is capable of bridging all these gaps between the camp that believes only Bibi, then the gap that believes anyone but Bibi. And the 2 big parties were not willing to establish a shared coalition, and none of them got the majority of 61 seats in the Knesset out of 120 members of Knesset, which is the majority that is needed to establish a new government. So this is with the bad news, but actually I thought that since we are experiencing so much bad news in the past weeks, I want to focus here on a little bit of a more positive approach to the way Israel is dealing with the corona crisis. Of course, it's too soon to tell whether there is a success, but yet I want to point out a few topics that it is, important to take a look at. First, the main principles of dealing with the corona crisis are the same principles everywhere in the world. There is no cure or a medicine for the coronavirus. So all of us all over the world are trying social isolation, increasing the amount of tests, education for more hygiene, elbow shakes, and cleaning our hands, washing our hands. We take steps, all countries in the world take steps to deal with the economic crisis that derives from the social isolation. Okay, each country is doing this a little bit differently, but the principles are the same, and it's the same with regard to Israel. So just a few details about what is happening in Israel with regard to all of that. As far as I know, as we speak, according to this morning, we had about 4,500 people that were infected with the virus in Israel. Considering the amount of tests that were done, about 7,000 tests in the past 24 hours and a few thousands in the past week, each day in the past week, and we have 9 million people here, I think this is good news. But it's interesting to see that in Israel, the percentage of infected people until the age of 50 is pretty high. Yet the amount of death, about 15 people died of coronavirus in Israel, are mostly old people above 70 or 80 and even 90 years old. Every day there are 600 more people that are infected in the virus in Israel, which is, by the way, again, it's not an exponential growth, and this is very encouraging. All the hospitals in Israel today are prepared to absorb a big amount of patients. Actually, many of the hospitals in Israel evacuated many of the patients that are not critical, that there is no clear obligation to keep them in the hospital. And I can give you personal examples of my father and my husband's father. Both of them were hospitalized in the past 2 weeks, and both of them were released in a medical situation that in regular times they would be kept in the hospital. So that way the hospitals are now capable of absorbing more patients. But the big fear in Israel, like elsewhere in the world, is the issue of the breathing machines. We only have about 2,000 breathing machines. This is a small amount, and I will talk about it in a minute. Yet, Israel was kind of lucky. We were lucky that, and it's tragic luck, because we were lucky to have 2 weeks looking at what was happening in China, what was happening in Italy, and then making the preparations in Israel. And actually, the Israeli government decided upon social isolation in very early stages of the disease in Israel, closing public places and businesses when there were very few patients over here, very few infected people over here. Today, there are already few communities in Israel that are completely under lockdown. Along with that, when we speak about the economic issue, the Israeli government already promised assistance to employees and to employers. Not enough assistance. We know that there are being discussions about that, but it's better than, I'm sorry, I will make this thing silent. I can't, okay. But not enough assistance, but I know that the Israeli government is about to publish more assistance later. I want to add few more principles that are important when we speak about the campaign against the coronavirus, principles that are more typical to the Israeli society and to Israel in general, or to Israelis. The first one is improvisation and innovation. We are known to be the startup nation. It's very nice when we speak about economic issues, but the fact that we are a startup nation is also contributing to the way we are looking at the coronavirus. And as we speak, there are a lot of people in Israel that are thinking and initiating and developing different initiatives for example, breathing machines, to increase the amount of breathing machines in Israel. I can give you one example of one of my friends that thought about actually a brilliant idea to take the regular manual machine that is being used in the battlefield by military paramedics in the IDF, and to replace the hand of the paramedic with something automatic, and actually create a very cheap and simple breathing machine. Research institutions in Israel are already working, cooperating with each other to invent a vaccine, to develop a vaccine for the virus. It will take time, we know that. But again, it's wonderful to learn that the innovation, the understanding that we need to work hard and create fast solutions is something that is part of our DNA. Another interesting principle is the usage of the army and the usage of security systems. Now, I want to say a few things about that. First, when we look at the IDF, the fact that we are now dealing with the coronavirus crisis pose challenging questions to the army, to the Israeli army. Not only how do we prevent the epidemic from penetrating into the army and defending our soldiers from getting sick, but also now the Israeli army is involved in two missions. One is protecting Israel from its regular enemies, Hezbollah, Iran, terror, whatever. And second, to be part of the national campaign against the coronavirus. There are a lot of questions with regard to this. How do you, for example, make pre-military trainings? All of these were canceled today. So if they are canceled, how do you pose the new soldiers to their units if you didn't do any pre-military trainings? I'll give you a small example again from Alma, one of our staff members. She was just released from the army, but she's also a mother, and her son was just recruited last week. You know, it's pretty much of a shock for the young boys the first few weeks in the army. They don't know when they are coming back. The IDF is not stopped all the vacations, and all the soldiers are now in the army. When we speak about the involvement of an army in the campaign against the corona, it sounds bad. It sounds an anti-democratic. It sounds like a dictatorship. What, the army will go around in the street, arrest people? This is something for the police. What, they will be armed? What exactly will happen? So first, we don't know whether the army will patrol in the streets. This is something which is under discussion today, and any scenario is possible. But I want to present to you few projects that the security systems and the IDF are involved in, and it's not obvious. First, those of you who visited Israel maybe stayed or heard of Dan Panorama Hotel, one of the most prestigious hotels in Israel, most famous hotels in Israel. Today, this hotel is being used for coronavirus patients which are in a mild situation, and it is being managed in a cooperation between the management of the hotel and the home front command. So actually there are two CEOs for the hotel today, the regular civilian CEO and the commander of the Northern Command unit that is responsible for the hotel. You see a cooperation between the workers of the hotel and the home front command soldiers. And there are a few more hotels like this elsewhere in Israel. The Home Front Command also activated the National Call Center and the National Situation Room. It's a platform actually that is like a 911 in the United States. People can call, report, ask questions, get a lot of information, and those who are answering the phone are actually Israeli soldiers. Mossad, everybody knows what Mossad is. Mossad is involved in getting medical equipment. Now, there is a lot of competition all over the world in getting medical equipment. And what the Mossad is doing is trying to get this kind of equipment, breathing machines, protection kits, test kits, from countries that we don't have any diplomatic relations with, but actually we do have connections with them below the radar. Speaking of the Mossad, there is also kind of a cyber effort to find a way to create new applications that will enable us to find ways to track patients, to track people that were nearby verified patients. But meanwhile, the Prime Minister, in a very unusual decision, announced that Israel will use what is called the tool, meaning a digital tool that until today, in the hands of the Shin Bet, that until today was only used for a battle against terror, not for any internal usage. And today, this tool will be used, after a lot of discussions, by the way, in the government and with the Shin Bet, and a lot of limitations, will be used to track people who were around verified patient and to notice them that they are under danger. Now, just to explain, because there were a lot of debates about that in Israel, the reason that this mission is not given to any civilian companies, or it is not, or that Israel is not using any database of a civilian company, is because the database in the hand of the Shin Bet is much more sophisticated and will give much better results than the civilian databases. Moreover, I think that this decision, which, as I've said, not everybody agreed in Israel with this decision, accelerated the process of establishing the government, accelerated the processes in the Knesset, because the Supreme Court made a very clear statement that this should be supervised by the Knesset. Meanwhile, or in parallel to the digital tool of the Shin Bet, the Health Office published a new application named Hamagen, where people voluntarily can subscribe to the application. And actually that way, the Health Office can follow their where they are located and inform them whether they were around a verified patient. So you see how all the different systems in Israel are working together and getting the help of the security systems in Israel. The last typical principle for Israel is the issue of the fact that the Israeli society is not an individualist society. So though we are a very heterogenic society, actually we are preserving ourselves, we are viewing ourselves as a tribe. So if I may, I will invent a word in English now, which is communication, kehilatiyut, those of you who speak a little bit of Hebrew. What does that mean? There is a sentence in the Bible, Kol Israel Arevim Ze Laze. All Israelis vow to each other. This is also part of our DNA. We must help each other. And with this crisis of the corona, we are seeing here in Israel a lot of initiative of young people that actually understood that people need help. Not only old people, which is, by the way, there are also initiatives about that. People that a moment ago were fine and now they need help because they have no income, so they need food, especially before Passover. Doctors that are spending all their time in the hospital and there is nobody to be with their kids, nobody to cook for the kids, nobody to have, to buy food for the kids. And we see more and more initiatives that are matching volunteers to those who need a little bit of assistance. Families with children with special needs need somebody to babysit the children that now have nowhere to go to. They are at home all day. And more like this. And I think, and all of these initiatives are private initiative, not governmental initiative. And I think it's very nice to see that the Israeli society is also recruited to this public effort against the coronavirus. A few words about the political tangle. So as I said, all this issue of the digital measures, the tool of the Shin Bet, and actually the whole crisis of the corona accelerated the establishment of a government in Israel after we already felt that we are in a dead end, that we are on a verge of fourth round of election. And eventually Benjamin Gantz from Kahol Lavan, that promised that he will not go to a government with when Netanyahu is the prime minister, decided to do that in order to establish a government that can actually fight the coronavirus, that can allocate budgets to fight the coronavirus, not only in the health system, but mainly to deal with the economic collapse. I assume that as I speak, or maybe in a few hours or a day or two, we will learn how the new government looks like. And Benjamin Gantz took a great risk. This may be the end of his political career because he promised not to sit with Netanyahu when Netanyahu was indicted 3 times, committing severe crimes. But I think Benny Gantz understood that the circumstances now are different. The fact that the Likud got 36 seats in the Knesset means that many people in Israel, 1.3 million people in Israel, voted for Netanyahu, though they knew that he is going to be tried. The presumption of innocence, I think this is a principle that many Israelis completely believe in. So though Benny Gantz had to dismantle Kahol Lavan to join the government that many of his party opposed to, he understood that the corona crisis changed the rules of engagement here, and he had no choice. And as a soldier, and he is a soldier, he was the #1 soldier, he chose to pay a personal price in order to enable the government to function. I can say that the corona crisis is what we call the Yom Kippur of the health system in Israel. You know, this is an image that we use when we mean the Yom Kippur War, the 1973 war, when we were surprised by the Arabs. We felt that this is a catastrophe. We felt that we are dealing with a crisis that we don't know how it's going to end, and we mainly felt that we were not prepared. And I think this is the same feeling here. The health system in Israel was not prepared. The fact that today we are much more prepared than we used to be 2 weeks ago is much more thanks to luck, as I've said, because we had time to learn from other countries, but not thanks to the fact that we actually invested in the health system in the past 10 years. The fact that the Israeli society is based on people that served in the army and have experience in dealing with crisis, with the need to a quick reaction to changing reality, to be very creative, to be capable of improvising, and to be entrepreneurs and to have initiative. I think this actually is exposed today as an advantage in this very special situation of the coronavirus. Well, to summarize, all these measures that were taken by the Israeli government, the Israeli army, the security system, and the Israeli society, though all the criticism, all the polarization, the political polarization in the Israeli society, I think Israelis responded to the crisis by demonstrating resilience and solidarity. Most sectors are actually following the instructions of the government, and many businesses in Israel were adapted to the new situation. For example, creating takeaway platforms or sending their markets or merchandise to people's home. I am personally speaking, I'm an ex-officer in the army, and in the past few years I was very busy in the Alma Center in preparing to the next war. And actually I must say that war worries me much more than this epidemic, and without underestimating the threat and the challenge that this epidemic is posing to around the globe, I think that war is much more dangerous, will cause much more casualties and death, including to young people, and also will cause to a much wider economic damage. So we are dealing with a great difficulty in a crisis that we don't know how much it's going to last. But, I always think it could be worse. And that's why I think that all of us around the globe will have to be patient and eventually pray and believe that we will pass this crisis quickly. And soon we will be able to come to travel and to see the most beautiful cities in the world: Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, New York, Rome, and kicking. Much more quickly than we thought. So that was that. I'll see you next Monday. Let's see if you had. I'll see you next Monday at the same time, and we will deal in the coronavirus in the Arab world, myths and facts. Okay, so farewell for now. Bye-bye.